One of the most interesting things about where we are right now is the fact that we're in an aircraft maintenance hangar. And on one hand, that's like an aviation geek's paradise, right? On the other hand, and I don't know if I can claim this right now, but we might be the only podcast or interview happening at this moment or in the world in an aircraft maintenance hangar, which is quite cool. Now, on that fact, when you look at aviation, right, and when you look at the people within aviation, when you enter the industry, you either love it or you don't, right? What people kind of say is they say you're either bitten by the aviation bug, right? And then you love it, right? So you either love it or you don't. Your history being within the MRO industry, specifically in training, what would you say was your aviation bug? Like what bit you to get you into aviation?
Yeah, that's a good question, Michael. When I was a kid growing up, I was fascinated by planes, and I think, for some young guys, usually, it kind of fades away. For me, it never did. So I saw the industry, that, the part that fascinated me, and also how big it is, and there's a lot to do in it. It seemed like a good business to be in. Yeah, so, I decided to study aviation. I majored in aeronautical science, got my private pilot license. When I started working into pilot training organization at first. I was in aviation, but I always in training. And one of my colleagues said there's real good company, FL Technics. So I tried over there. There was opening in training department.
Interesting part about that, you're with FL Technics right now, but something about your history where you did study at your university,
Florida Institute of Technology.
Yes, Florida Institute of Technology. Did you know, like, from the beginning that, look, I'm going to go into the maintenance sector, right? Like, was that something that you knew, or was it something that, like, you got into through someone telling you about it, or you just knew, I'm going to go into this?
When I started studying over there, I was going into aviation. When you're young, you don't segregate that much. Aviation maintenance has that thing that fascinates me in aviation, which is there's a lot of logical sense that goes behind all the procedures and processes, and it's very clear. So in maintenance sector, there's a lot of it. And that's fascinating.
Interesting part about that. And now we're going to talk about training, right? You mentioned that you're part of FL Technics Training. You've been part of this training industry for the last 10 years now. Give us just a short, brief overview, or just a short introduction into what you actually do today.
Yeah, I'm a training manager at FL Technics 147. Training manager is like official aviation title. It's like a position within the organization. Basically, this is the person, like a nominated person who is in charge to manage their organization and to ensure that it complies to aviation regulation, right? This is my main duty, right? I'm in charge of making sure it's all compliant and that the courses that we run are legal for the students to take certificates and get that endorsed into their licenses.
Which is quite interesting, because when you look at, if you're looking at the aviation industry today on a surface level, right, on a public level, some people might just see it as the only thing that you can do is maybe be a pilot or be a flight attendant. Right. But then there's like a whole ecosystem around aviation, around, like, when a plane lands at an airport to when it takes off. There's a whole lot of, different spectrums across, whether, being a pilot, being a flight attendant, and then into engineering, into line maintenance, into base maintenance, right? And the full spectrum of that. Now, if you look at a Part 147 organization, you're responsible for training, and feel free to correct me, you're responsible for establishing the training and the examinations of individuals who either want to get into the training aspect of MRO, or these could be individuals who also are already within MRO, or organizations that also need training as well. Talk a little bit about that, right? Some of those operations that you kind of work on.
My main function is to run the, organization from legal point of view, from aviation regulation point of view. But the main product of 147, right, is to train future or current employees of 145 organization, the one that we are in right now. So our main product is training which are related to either getting initial license or adding specific aircraft type rating endorsement within the license, right? Of course, we provide much more training, but this is not exclusively 147 organization privilege. So we train future camo engineers on some soft skills and hard skills, but main product is related with aircraft maintenance license for the personnel who will be employed in using that license within Part 145 organization.
And just maybe even expanding on that a little bit, your history, I'm going to tie back to your history slightly because, one, you've been in this industry now for about 10 years. As an EASA approved EASA Part 145 organization, FR Technics has been involved with that for about 20 years now. And then before that, it was JAR. Talk a little bit about that history because you've been a part of that, for quite a significant amount of time.
FR Technics has grown from Lithuanian Airlines historically, there was this training department, which was mainly a support unit for 145 organizations. And then, it turned out to be a business unit where, while we support our main customers, FL Technics, we also our goal is to attract more customers and do a training business with them. We have EASA approval for more than 20 years now. I've been with the organization for 10 years. It has grown a lot. We built many aircraft types. We can provide any solution to customer. So it's interesting to see how the organization goes from within.
Just talking about growth now, because when you look at, so EASA right now, we are, part of this organization, the EASA Part 145. But when you look at FR Technics as a whole, as a, global MRO group and FR Technics training, you're operating all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Latin America, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia Pacific, right? Talk about that, because here, as I understand, you're operating in 81 countries.
Yeah.
But, talk about, your kind of global presence there.
Yeah, we are global. When just to explain, Michael, how the training organization works. When we talk, people think of there's a school with physical classrooms that students come in, and there's 737 course runs in February. It's a bit different, right? Some schools work like that, which are associated maybe with colleges or with internal training. But organization, is basically like a department, and we run courses which are usually, remote. I'll expand on that a little bit. Yeah, we've done training in more than 80 countries, but it doesn't mean that we have offices or schools over there. It means that we can do training courses anywhere, right? And it's not only within EASA. So how it looks, very simple, instructor, customer needs course, instructor goes, flies to customer's location, delivers course over there. Of course, there are a lot of processes that go beyond. We need to approve that location legally with our authority to do training courses within time frame. But this is how it looks, so we're very global. It's not only within EASA. We also, we operate in many countries which either accept EASA one way or another. For some, it's a bit more difficult. For some, it's much simpler. Some of them just simply accept it. Some need some additional compliance documents. And in some regions, it's fully new approval. For example, in UAE, in Pakistan, in Thailand, we have fully separate approval with, it's considered as a separate organization. And after course, we give 2 certificates, one EASA certificate and one of that approval. So we have experience in doing under many different jurisdictions.
Which is quite interesting. I mean, it creates an interesting lifestyle profile, so to say, because, as an engineer, on a surface level, you might just expect that, look, I'm going to be locked up in a hangar for, the whole of my career, and I may not have a chance to travel anywhere or to experience anything different, in comparison to, like, let's say a pilot or flight attendants who are constantly flying, to different areas of the world. But what you're saying here is more like, okay, we have this presence in a lot of different places, and the organizations that we work with or the individuals that we work with, they have a chance to kind of, experience those different. I mean, is that correct? Or correct me if I'm wrong?
As I said, we do not have offices in these locations, right? And we also do not have local instructors. We do have in many countries local instructors, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be doing training courses over there, right? When I was telling how it looks from organization point of view, we send instructor, but from instructor's perspective, it looks like he goes to America 3 weeks, he does training there, he goes to Thailand, he goes to Europe, and he travels like that, comes back home for a week. We usually have agreements on how long, they want to get back home. We respect that. That's the only way to make it work. But, it's very interesting for some people who are able, willing, and want to travel, see the world. The job, educating another, sharing your knowledge, sharing your expertise. Instructors who work with us, they're really passionate about that. And, it's very meaningful work. Plus, they travel around the world. They are learning every day. They see different organizations. Interesting lifestyle.
Interesting lifestyle, and even more so how when you look at FL Technics training today as a part of, the larger FL Technics group, you mentioned that aspect of education, right? How a lot of your work is, as part of the training and the examinations, there's also a lot of educational aspects that are there. And there's a bit of two components here, right? Where you are, you're the training organization that does training internally within, the FL Technics crew, but you also do training for third parties, if I can call them that.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Our main customer is FL Technics, given that, main customer, I'm saying, not necessarily depending on the volume. They give us big volume, right? But in terms of responsibility, I would say this is very big customer that helps us grow because they are very demanding, right? And when we give training, we need to live with the consequences. We're always there for them. But of course, as a business unit, our goal is also to do training worldwide to many customers worldwide. So, we keep that same standards and same approach. In the same approach that we serve, FL Technics, we go to the industry and do the same standard of training, of support, of customer service, and so on.
Again, you go into the industry, lots of different jurisdictions,
Yeah.
right, of training that you have to navigate around. How do you manage that? Because I guess, there's different standardizations that are across different regions, right? How do you approach that? How do you manage that? How do you ensure that each organization that you are training, right, or that's under your, let's say, training programs, they get the standardization that is, appropriate for their jurisdiction or their region? Yeah.
Historically, we built our EASA organization, and we did some things, very specifically tailored to our own, how we want that. In some ways, we had very good flexibility, and we did as acceptable by EASA, by our authority. And then once we started adding another approvals, we see that it doesn't comply to other jurisdictions. So, and that's where you need to be creative, how to satisfy both parties, maintain flexibility. Our team was working very hard on that to do it. Because even some organizations, they have standards similar to EASA, but that doesn't mean that they have the same idea of how this can be accomplished. Because regulation is not always very specific. It says that you need to accomplish this. The way you do it is that it is acceptable by your authority. And at different points of view that we need to manage, it was quite challenging. I'm trying to think of example.
Maybe we could even extend on that point.
Yeah.
Because on being creative, right, in terms of how you approach different jurisdictions, different, organizations that need to follow those jurisdictions in the different regions. Another part of being creative, and I'm going to throw us back maybe 5 years in the past, where, we had the sudden burst or sudden onset of, digitalization or technology. And this came through COVID, right?
Yes.
Which, in a way, not just in aviation, not just in maintenance and training, but industries everywhere had to be creative in how they were going to continue business, continue their operations, and find ways to stay in touch with their customer, even from a screen.
Yeah.
Now, training itself, a significant and core aspect of training is that you need to have the individual in a classroom. That's how it's been, for centuries. How did you get creative, right, when COVID kind of came in and everybody had to get to a screen? How did you then maintain that type of training? What was your, creative approach to that?
Difficult time when I remember that, and we had to create a way. I remember because it stopped, And EASA, it took a while for EASA to publish some, recommendations and legal legal background on how it could be done, and it was a shock to everyone. For me, my inner aviation geek was kind of excited about how to create new processes to allow this to be done virtually. It started. I personally didn't even know what Zoom is. Is it camera system? Is it something? So I called IT department. It's like, what it means? It's like, no. This is just a software. You can do it on any computer. All right. So we were all learning. One thing is, you can come in, be creative, and and this is where you start. You become creative, and you see how it should be done, right? How it should be done to make it to make it a good training. Not to make sure that it's just ticking boxes, signing papers, and a video goes and this and that. So you kind of create a design of how you want students to feel and instructors to be, how it could work, and then you see, okay, what is the regulation requirements. At first there were no aviation and for example, I talked to my authority or to our quality department because we first started virtual trainings for non-147 training courses. These could be something that's not required by a license until it was allowed to do so. Some things, how are you going to ensure the student is actually attending? In regulation, there's very clear and strict points on what should be facility. Not too cold, not too hot, closed facilities. How are you going to ensure that student has that? A lot of compliance things that we had to think about and make procedures. So we prepared that. Then EASA came with this recommendations of how it should be done. So on some points we were spot on some points we had to rework once again. How many students we allow, what is the maximum duration student can do per day, and this and that. Interesting period, a lot of working.
Mm-hmm. So we've now taking a look at the creative process that you took to, set up this digital training environment. What does that look like today? Because obviously today you're conducting the remote examinations, you're conducting virtual practice and training as well, all within this digital ecosystem, like digital platforms. What does that look like today for you and for FR Technics Training?
It's it could sound exciting. It really is. Basically, there are a lot of restrictions in it. There are a lot of procedures to be followed to ensure that we are spot on. It's not the same for all the organizations. As I said, other organizations do it a bit differently, and this is a bit of lack of standardization on how they are controlled and how they accomplish certain things. So it's not that easy to organize. It's still difficult to monitor students' attendance. We have, if EASA allows up to 12 students in the classroom because that's what's manageable for one instructor to check if he's attending or not. And on our procedures and our view, we are very strict on attendance. There are two main factors, for student to complete the courses: attendance and examination. So attendance is one of them, and how we ensure that he is actually attending and he's not gone out to the kitchen to make himself a meal. Up to 12 is manageable, and then EASA allows more if there are additional measures. So if we want additional students, we need another person who would be monitoring students, or make a video of it and so on. So we're very strict on that.
But some aspects must be easier though, because now, again, with digital platforms, you don't, students or any other organization that would be your clients, let's say. They don't necessarily need to come to a physical location.
Oh, no, they're doing training from home. Yeah. For us at our 147, we do it, and we have all the processes to do it. But our main customers are usually our businesses, right? We do not sell open seats, and we're focused a lot on good quality in training and good support. And usually our customers happen to be the ones who are actually passionate about training and take training very seriously. We do very few those remote courses, right? These are, they want instructor on site, right? But yeah, we still do it. As I said, attendance, was one of the things that we were very focused on to ensure that student is in good environment, in the environment which is not distracting, and he's not distracting other students. sometimes European instructor is doing courses for Americas, and then it's at night. For example, in Europe is night, so we have to make sure that all the human factors are considered, so that instructor does not fall asleep while doing long training, because training per day is, it's 6 hours of pure training, so that takes, with all the breaks, it takes 8 hours. It's a long time to be in front of a computer.
Which actually introduces another aspect to that, because there are the benefits and the pros, right? Which is, okay, everything is digital, you can do it from the comfort of your own home, right? But then maybe on the con side, or challenges, let's call them challenges.
Yeah.
And challenges from two perspectives, right? There's a challenge from the instructor perspective, and then from the student perspective, that how do instructors still deliver the same standard of training, within that lesson, right? And for students, because there might be some students who are comfortable learning from a digital platform, learning from home in their comfort, but they may feel, look, I want to be directly in a classroom or in an aviation environment, which helps me learn better. I mean, how are you approaching? Can you give us those two perspectives, from the instructor and then from the student's perspective?
Yeah, we have very specific methods on how to ensure, because honestly, I've been a student on virtual courses. It's so easy to get distracted. People get distracted with their phones very quickly, right? When you're within the classroom, can kind of commit, even with your best will to commit to the training, and you see email pops up. So it's very easy to be distracted. So, our instructors, what we do is just to make sure that, our instructors constantly monitor these students, asking them simple questions like, Michael, what was the last question? I asked you, something simple that it's not difficult, to answer. And there's no excuse to say, oh, I'm sorry, I do not know, because come on, we do that a lot. Of course, it takes a bit of time. We have additional methods on how to accommodate that, but it's, a lot of making sure, we need to focus much more on communicating to each student, and to make sure that, do you understand? Do you follow the course?
On one hand as well, that could be also difficult for instructors, right? To maintain and watch attention of every single student.
They get distracted from their training.
Exactly. They also get distracted as well. So how do you manage that? And we're still on the instructor perspective. How do you manage that? I mean, do you have like a circulating system of instructors who, like if it's one class that's and again, I'm going to assume here, let's say a 3-hour class, right? Is it multiple instructors, or is it just one instructor who's maybe monitoring the students? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, exactly for that reason is one of the things why we have, additional person helping out, just to, just to make sure the student instructor can relax, focus on their training, and someone else is taking care of attendance, and just to make sure the student instructor is on schedule, to deliver the course.
And interactability, because that's quite important, right? When you're sitting in the classroom, you have the possibility, Jonas, let's say I'm speaking, you're my instructor. I can directly ask you a question. Like if I'm confused with a topic or want to know more information, I can directly ask you a question, and you can give me direct feedback, right? Directly in the classroom. Is that the same? Do then instructors and students have that same relationship?
Of course not. But it's a bit more formal. You kind of see the face in a small icon, and you ask them questions. But in real classroom, I see that instructors really try to push. They become like you could not friendly, but they cheer for their students. They want to push them to learn. So it's one of the things that it doesn't happen in virtual classroom. But we also always need to make sure the student is present over there. We as I said, examination and attendance. This is also, historically, it used to be that cheating happens only in examination. Now we see cheating in attendance when it happens in virtual classroom. And we had, so a few of the examples which are funny, and we, it's not possible to do that anymore. Is that one of the things is, they place a virtual background of his video, which that's
quite popular at some point.
It wasn't, but fast forward the video, and you see that he's moving in the same way all the time. And then one time he walks into his video, so funny story. And also sometimes, we had one incident when student asked his friends to attend. Instructor, being virtually, doesn't get to know faces that much, especially if there are many of the students. So luckily we had assistant, who noticed that, you look differently yesterday. It's a funny incident, but it's very serious. We cannot let that happen.
Just listening to you say that, obviously, over the last couple of years, virtual backgrounds or just, looped videos of people either attending a meeting or attending a classroom, it's become a thing.
Yeah.
Right? There's some companies in the world that actually sell that as a product, right? But I guess there should be an engagement aspect where, again, the instructor can engage with the student can engage with the instructor. What does that look like, right? What are the platforms, or how can the students engage, which also at the same time kind of confirms their attendance? Because yes, the student can attend.
Exactly. One of the tools is that we have to regularly talk to students, right? To get their feedback, to ask their questions. So this is the only thing. And when student feels that it's the goal of instructor, that instructor wants them to learn, that he's passionate about students learning and understanding, right? And he's here not just to deliver and read all the material, but he's pushing them to learn so that they succeed not only during examinations, but in their career as well. Then students become more and more active. Active instructor means active students. This is what we work for, and this is why instructor's role is very important. And we need to work when we work with instructors, we invest a lot in that, just to make sure that they're up to that standard, that they can actually do this training like that.
I want to come. So we've taken a look at the instructor perspective, the student perspective. I want to take a step back and look on a broader scale to the training organization's perspective, right? In particular, standardization of the different teaching, the different training, examination processes, because when everything is now digital, it kind of brings in a different, perspective, a different aspect. Also factoring what we talked about earlier, that again, different jurisdictions, different regions. Talk about that. Standardization. I mean, is it the same for every organization? I mean, or are there differences? What's that like?
From big picture, yes, but from student experience, it could feel different, right? Or from organizational experience. So regulatory body like EASA, they issue regulation and they say this is what needs to be accomplished, and it's up to each organization to create how they're going to accomplish and achieve that, right? And while for some authorities, one method might be acceptable, for others, different method might be acceptable, and there are different points of view. And that's why, EASA has standardization teams, which goal is to ensure that everyone follows same standard in same acceptable way. But, it veered off in different directions. And I think we're going to see a bit more strict standardization in the future. But as of right now, there are some very creative, I would say, organizations who are dealing it in very simple way. We try to focus on what's really important. We're very strict on attendance, very strict on examination.
Again, that's also quite an important aspect, or I will think it's an important aspect, because there's a whole lot of online transformation or training transformation that the industry, you as an organization, or multiple even industries have had to adapt to, right?
Yeah.
And it's, some people, they do it differently. Some organizations are doing it differently. How do you create that same experience? Or no, actually, what has been your experience, right, in navigating just this new realm and spectrum of online transformed training? How have you navigated that experience and just made sure that it's the same, the people who go through a live session in a classroom before, when they go through a digital classroom or a live stream classroom, that it's the same result at the end of the day? How have you navigated that?
Yeah, so at first it was very new for everyone. In the classroom, it's instructor sharing material, this and that. First couple of years for everyone, it was very new, but now it became a new standard, it's either classroom training or virtual training. What's interesting that is that we always had this platform, not always, last 10 years or so, have had this platform of pre-recorded training, in which it was, you go in, you buy a training, it's self-paced training, it's usually some interactive either slides, or there's an actor speaking and delivering material. But this virtual classroom training became new normal, and we replicated that into pre-recorded platforms, so which is online pre-recorded training courses like human factors, fuel tank safety, and we even launched some general familiarization courses, which are like 5 days training. And we recreated the same experience as you would be attending virtual course type training course. It's the same way. Real instructor, even it's recorded in a different way. It's not so polished. It's instructor speaking, delivering course same way he would be doing with students attending. But there's a video. There's some interactivity. Students are also allowed to ask questions. Of course, answers a bit delayed, right? To try to respond within a couple of days. But still, we try to replicate so that students get the same level of standard, which is acceptable for EASA in type training. So this is one of the things that when we complied with type trainings, with the 147 real type basic trainings to virtual environment, we replicated that to improve, and to grow our online training, pre-recorded training course.
On the topic of type training, which you just brought up there, again, you've been in this business now, you've yourself for 10 years, FL Technics for, 3 decades, right? One unique aspect of that is the Boeing 737NG continuation, right?
Yeah.
Where I think, that might have been your first aircraft type. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is, this is the pilot course for what we did. It's for many years we had this demand, how to make pre-recorded self-paced aircraft type continuation training course, and we did not want to do it simple way where there are some providers with they're just part of the required documents attached in the system. You read it yourself, self-declaration, that's it. But I wanted to do like real course as if you would be attending in real classroom. But this course, different to other ones, it needs to be updated all the time. So we need to update it every week. Every Monday morning, our subject matter experts analyzes if there are any updates issued on that aircraft type by manufacturer Boeing or by EASA about some airworthiness directives, service bulletins, what's new within the aircraft. If there was something issued, right, we make new training material on it. We film instructor on these new updates, and we update it. So next week, you have something that was just issued in it. And this is what it needs to be done. It needs to have all the updates that happened over the last 2 years covered. And when the student comes into this online, training pre-recorded, there's instructor do like a refreshment of the systems, and he introduced, okay, last week there was this thing issued, how it's done, you need to do inspection here, something like that. But it's controlled environment in that way that student cannot just skip to another slide. He cannot do other activities, because if you open up Facebook, it video will stop. It asks you questions. So from my perspective, it's as good as it gets. So, I believe in this product. We'll see how it turns out to be. I really want this to be a successful one, because I know it's way better than do self-training in case you missed actual live session within your company to do type training course.
I mean, self-training might be quite hard because you miss, a core aspect of being guided by an instructor. Wouldn't that be the case? Yeah.
Yeah. In that case, it's same way as a self-study. If you have a question, what do you do with that self-study?
But then, I guess another aspect to that is that, fine, you can maybe take self-study for yourself, but is that something that is approved by the regulatory body?
Exactly.
Which then approves the training organization.
Exactly.
And, is that within the framework of actually learning?
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to do something that, it's good quality self-paced course, right? Which could be really equivalent to the one that's really in the classroom,
while still having some form of monitoring of that training process. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I want to give an analogy here. When you look at an aircraft, right, obviously, and I'm going to say the training organization is the aircraft, and you've got the passengers being the students and organizations that you then teach. And then you've got instructors who are the engines, right? The aircraft's not going to go anywhere without its engines, right? And you really need good engines who can take on that capacity, whether it's for short haul distances or for long haul distances. How is that, or how is it finding good instructors, right, to have within your organization to be able to drive the aircraft forward? I mean, how are you navigating? Because, again, it's one thing for an instructor to be able to teach in front of a classroom live. It's another thing to translate that into a digital environment. How is it finding good instructors?
Yeah, good instructors. It's I think in the industry you always hear that it's all about people. We need everyone's in short of people, and for us it's the same way. We're always competing to get new instructors, and we need a lot of instructors. We're running a big operation, right? So we have 80 plus instructors. Finding average instructor is quite easy, but finding good instructor, and training him to be a good instructor, so that's difficult part. Instructor needs to be, he needs to have that passion, and he needs to, of course, there's one thing, ability to teach. It doesn't come for everyone. Some of them really want to do it, but they don't feel good standing in front of the classroom. They're better doing one-on-one supervision, something like that. And there's technical aspect. It's not, you can be a maintenance engineer for long times, right? But once you are challenged by other students in the classroom, and some of the students are also subject matter experts of that same aircraft type, they just need legal EASA certificate, right? So it's really challenging. And you see, our instructors are always learning, always teaching, always studying. So it's one of things is finding good people and then working on them to become very good instructors.
And there's a duality to that, for the instructors, because as you mentioned, on the technical aspect, one, they're always learning, right?
Yeah.
You might be in a classroom where you've got students who also have the same, the same type, let's call it type rating, for that particular course. They're just not licensed, as you said. Now, the duality is you've got some instructors who are full-on instructors, and then you've got some instructors who, shall we call them part-time, in the sense that they're also still freelance, or they're still operating on the field. Give us that, an overview of that.
They're all instructors. The ones who are full-time instructors, it's way easier to work with them because they have full availability for training. They can go for longer periods and so on. Other instructors, they do, for example, they work in line maintenance, and they also work as instructor on their spare time. So I don't want to classify them, what one is like that, the other one is like that, but there's a pros of always being active in maintenance and knowing having hands-on experience all the time, and they're active, but also full-time instructors, they do a lot of studying, they go into maintenance, they do a lot of practical training, they're staying current in the same way. It's just different lifestyle, I guess, from instructors' perspective, right? What they appreciate, if they want to be, we have some instructors who are very passionate about training, and that's all they want to do, and they like to travel, they like to visit other companies, they like to give training all the time.
Before we even jump into that lifestyle aspect, which I want to speak about, next, where the approval process, right? There are a number of stages involved.
How to become an instructor.
Exactly, how to become an instructor, and I guess also the process that you would go through as a student as well.
Yeah.
Right. Share more about that.
It's another way. Different organizations accomplish it differently. Basically, approved instructor, same as aircraft flying. For it to be airworthy, there's a bunch of documents to ensure its compliance. Same with instructor. There's a person, and for him to be a legal Part-147 maintenance training organization instructor, there's a authorization form with lots of documents behind it, right? But approval process, so for us, it's not documents. We do initial interview, right, with instructor, just to make sure, is he fit for the job from, first feeling. We do a lot of, background checks and technical knowledge checks. Does he know the aircraft? So it's one thing is that he has it in his license, he has experience, but also, we examine him, with other instructor, do you know this? Do you know that? Students all give these questions. We try to ensure, that he is technically fit to deliver a course to students who might challenge him in the future. Now, there goes also training on our procedures and our processes. How do we work within our company? From what documents do we fill? How we approach customer? This and that. So there's a lot of internal training on that. We do gap analysis also of the technical documents that he has versus what is needed for our organization. And then another thing is that we do, before he gets approved, we get this qualification board meeting where, we meet with our quality department, training manager, examination manager, all, like a commission. A candidate to instructor would go in front of the class and give us like a live session. We are students, and we test him during, he gives us presentation, and we push him, to see how he responds. Does he know what procedure to follow? He gives training, we ask questions, we do this and that just to see how he acts and if he is ready to go in the field and do the training. Also thoroughly examined on all the procedures and how he would react in different...
which is quite interesting on the individual, you training the individual. And I'm going to take a bit more of a personal tangent here because I myself have a background in aircraft maintenance, having done a degree in aerospace and aeronautical engineering with a specialization, as they would say, in technical aircraft maintenance. But I would just say I'm an unlicensed engineer.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm at that point. Going from there, what would have been, if I'd gone ahead, obviously I've taken a different career step now, right? But if I'd gone ahead to pursue with the maintenance, so if I had taken steps forward with the maintenance on a personal level, what would be my next steps, right? Or like, where would I be headed from that point?
One of the first steps, and the main goal for someone who enters maintenance field, how to get licensed, right? So there's one thing, it becomes from three things, knowledge, right? Experience and certificates. So you need to pass basic modules, right? You need to collect your experience within. So with that, you collect your logbook, you complete legal requirements, and depending on if you go to basic training school or if you go experience route, you might have to go through actual basic training, which is a couple of years of training courses, or you can just pass examinations, depending on how much experience you have, and then you apply for license. You add another aircraft type because first it's empty. Then you go to 147 organization again. You get theoretical training, type training. For first aircraft type, you need also what's called on-job training to make sure that you have maintenance experience on that particular aircraft type, on all the systems. You get license endorsement. And from that point on, you can be certifying or support staff within the organization, right? But of course, there are many other
parts that someone can take. Yeah. Which is interesting because how would you compare it to, for example, with getting a PPL? Because you have your own PPL, right? How would you compare the process of becoming a licensed engineer with the process of becoming, or the process of obtaining a PPL, a private pilot's license?
I think they're quite similar in from regulatory point of view. It's way different on what they need to study.
Because I guess on one hand, you're either going to get the license that allows you to fly the aircraft. On the other hand, you're getting a license to maintain it.
Yep.
I guess. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Different subject, different volume of training. But yeah, basically it's the same. It's going for a license. You need knowledge, practice, and experience on it. So
we've seen you've talked about the individual level on a student level.
Yeah.
At an organizational level, right? What is as a training organization, when you are training, as you mentioned earlier in our conversation, your main clients are businesses, right? What's then your approach in assessing that, all right, this client or this business that we've had now under a particular program, they have fulfilled the requirements, or they have fulfilled the requirements, let's say, to complete their training, or they fulfilled, the minimum requirements to be able to actually take part in a specific program or type rating. What's then your approach with that on business level?
Yeah, usually our customers already know what they need. They need specific course for specific students. Sometimes, of course, we consult them if they might need something more, if they might need something else, and if it could be then. But usually it's very it's very specific. Customer comes with specific need. We need type training for this many engineers to learn on A320neo, for example. Okay, and then we organize this course. It's not about assessing their training needs, it's about assessing their needs as an organization, I would say. What's important for them, do we do training at your facility, at our facility? maybe it's virtual training. Product gets a bit more complex. How we're going to organize examinations, what kind of support do you need during that training? So it focuses a bit more on how we deal with the customer, what customer support they get. I think that's what's important, because it's very standardized training courses, unless we talk about the non-part 147 activity. Even there, we do have a lot of standard human factors, type continuation, fuel tank safety, EWIS, and so on. Sometimes they want some very specific training, just for their company. Then we can, in that case, we work out on discussion. Okay, they need, you need some sort of OGT for their shop maintenance, how to build good employees because they keep on failing. And then we try to work out design specifically for them, right? But other than that, most cases, customer really knows the product that they need. It's just a matter of what's important for you as a customer.
I was looking at your competition landscape, and one interesting, aspect that I saw there, or unique aspect, is that on one hand, yes, you are competing with other training organizations, Part 147, but you're also competing with Part 145 organizations, which you could say are the organizations that would come to you as, businesses to, get training as well. Talk more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, with 147s, we compete, of course, with our customers. There's a lot of competition when it happens with instructors, of course, right? So when we talk about, instructors who are working part-time, they're making always decisions whether, I want to spend more time with 145 or with 147. And we see it go both ways, whatever it's more comfortable for instructor, because money, it could be more attractive in one place or in another place. It's very competitive over there. But for some of them, it depends on, what they want to do. Maybe they want to be a bit more local. So they say, I really want to teach. Usually that's the answer. They say, I really want to travel and, be instructor, but I have to be local with my family. And once, it depends on the person whether he's attached to home more. But for people who are, able, willing to travel, usually being instructor is their main choice.
There's such a, as we're speaking today, I'm discovering there's such a strong travel component that also influences someone's decision, whether they're an instructor or a student. And that also builds the lifestyle that you can have, where obviously, as we spoke earlier today, where on a surface level, someone might not know that, look, if I take this route as an instructor or to become a licensed engineer, 1 week I could be working in Latin America and Brazil. Another week I could be, in the Asia Pacific, let's say in Indonesia or Jakarta. In another, couple of months, I'm working in Indonesia, Jakarta. And then for the next 6 months, I'm in Europe, and I'm also working on a project there. Give us that, how would I say it, that profile or the closing line, right, of the lifestyle that someone can have, whether they are an instructor with your organization or they are a student or a business that's part of one of your clients. What would be like your closing line?
Yeah,
Say that. Yeah.
I personally I'm really passionate about this, business line, about training. And I see instructors who are really passionate to be instructors. They like the traveling component of it because, 1 month here, 1 month there, they're traveling and they see a lot of people. But also, it's very purposeful, that they are teaching new students. And sometimes their management comes in. It's like you as instructor, you taught, like 200 of our stuff. And it's really fulfilling. I see, instructors happy pictures with many students, who are happy after their training. So I think, a lot, it's a combination of both, instructors come back with, full of excitement after courses, rest 1 week home, and then travel to another location and do, repeat the same thing and keep on teaching, sharing the knowledge and expertise to the group of students.
And as a student as well, just that prospect, because, I guess, which I said earlier, a student might have a perspective, the perspective or the perception that, okay, if I'm going to be going into maintenance, I'm going to be locked up in one place. But when you look at, let's say FL Technics today, you're all over the world, right? And, what is that possibility or that structure for, let's say, a student that, does training with your organization, goes on to work for FL Technics, what's that prospect of them, working in different parts of the world?
Oh, you can work anywhere you want, as long as you want it and you tell about it. Yes, I think once you have it, once you have experience, once you have your certificates, you're in global industry. You can go and work anywhere, even if your license is not recognized within that country. We can start and apply for new one. People with experience are welcomed everywhere.
And a closing statement for you as we wrap up our conversation here. What are you looking forward to the most for your career, obviously in training and the future of where that's going to go, as well as being a part of FR Technics as well? Like, what are you looking forward to the most?
I'm looking forward to see how it's going to transform. I see that in some places there are a lot of enthusiastic companies coming with very creative solutions. I see that EASA allows it and welcomes it into the training industry. I really want to see how training industry is going to transform and add new tools. I think that will be pretty exciting.
Fantastic. Jonas, thank you so much for taking time to speak to us in this interview. Obviously, look, we're in an aircraft hangar, very unique place, and we're talking about aviation, about MRO training as well. I could have been here if I had taken a different step, but it's been a pleasure to speak to you today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.